Hey guys, in this video, I wanted to run through where I currently stand on my predictions for the 2020 general election matchup between what's becoming more and more the presumptive nominee on the Democrat side with the former Vice President, Joe Biden, and his head-to-head matchup against the current Republican President, Donald Trump. And this is going to be a fluid situation over the course of this next year. There's a lot that can happen that could affect how these states end up voting come November. If you have not already done so, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel to continue to get poll update informations, predictions, as well as the coverage of the primaries throughout the course of this next year. Not just the presidential election, but we're also going to be having a lot of very interesting competitive House districts and Senate races. So for all of that content that's going to be coming out over this next year, again, consider subscribing. So like I said, there's a lot that can happen over this next year that can change how people vote. Things like, is the stock market going to continue to decline and hurt the economic situation? If that's the case, it would make things more challenging for Donald Trump. But if the economy can rebound and get back to a position that it was earlier in the year, then that would be a positive indicator for Trump possibly going on and winning that reelection bid. And then on the Democrat side, some of the things to look out for would be, is Joe Biden able to get enough enthusiasm among progressive voters and younger voters to come out and vote for him like they didn't do as much for Hillary Clinton in 2016? That's a concern for a Joe Biden nomination. Now, perhaps the Democrats are thinking they can flip enough suburban white voters who used to be more so in the Republican camp, and maybe that can make up the difference. We'll see if that's going to be the case or not. And then also, the elephant in the room is Joe Biden's mental capacity, what he's going to be doing on the debate stage, in interviews, when he's going around the country in campaigning. He's always been somewhat of a gaffe machine, but it's kind of increased in nature more so, and his campaigning team has kind of limited his exposure to a large degree over the course of this past year, and he's kind of been running almost a shadow campaign, and it's been working for him as he's looking like he's going to become that presumptive nominee for the Democrats. I don't think they're going to be able to do that with as much success going into a general election, so we'll see how that entire scenario plays out for the Democrats. So there's, like I said, a lot of things that can change how this election goes, and I'm going to continue to keep you guys updated. So I want to run through going over these states that I think are worth discussing to some degree. That's 225 of the electoral votes. You can see I already have 188 electoral votes safe for the Democrats and Joe Biden, and 125 electoral votes safe for Donald Trump and the Republicans. So I'm going to start out west, work my way through the southeast, then up into the east, and kind of finish in the Midwest. That's where the election was decided back in 2016, and there's a very good chance and possibility that's also where the election is decided in 2020. So the Southwest, this is a region of the country that's become much more favorable for the Democrats over time. The demographic shifts here have been a big help in that. Starting off in Nevada, Hillary Clinton was able to win this state in 2016, and then in 2018, we saw the Democrats pick up a Senate seat as well as grabbing the governorship, and it would seem that this would be a likely scenario for them to continue to go on and pick up that state in 2020. Colorado, even a little bit more to the left than Nevada. Going to be putting that one as just one stage of being safer in that likely category for Joe Biden and the Democrats. Also, again, a state that Hillary Clinton was able to pick up in 2016. And Arizona, I kind of put it right in that essentially true toss-up scenario, and I'm going to leave it for now. What I'm going to do here is go through all of the states, and the ones that I feel like are true toss-ups, I'm going to touch on right at the end and give it as either a very slight tilt over to Trump and the Republicans or a very slight tilt over to Joe Biden. So again, we'll leave the state of Arizona. Now, Texas, it feels like it's probably at least an election cycle or two away from being seriously contended by the Democrats. But again, the demographic shifts here are making the state much more competitive. We saw this in the 2018 midterms with Beto O'Rourke having a serious challenge to Ted Cruz. Came up just short by 2 to 3 percentage points, but it proved that a Democrat could be competitive statewide in Texas. Now we're a couple of years removed from that, with the demographics continuing to get better for the Democrats. So a state to keep an eye on, and one where Joe Biden could feasibly do well enough to contend and maybe even flip that one. Obviously, if the state of Texas goes over to Joe Biden and the Democrats, then it will be a situation where the Democrats are going to have a lot of success on the 2020 election night. But I still think, at least at this point in time, it's still probably going to be going over to Trump and the Republicans. So then Florida, always competitive in these election presidential years. It's probably going to continue to be that way in 2020. The state went to Trump in 2016. It went to Obama and the Democrats in 2012 and 2008. and close margins one way or the other in all of those instances. I'm going to leave that one in the true toss-up camp and then give it as a tilt at the end of the video. Georgia, one of these southeastern states that actually can be competitive. We saw this in the 2018 midterms with their governor's race, Stacey Abrams coming up just short against Kemp, and with high voter turnout, a state that the Democrats can conceivably win statewide. We'll see how it goes in 2020. Clinton was able to keep it within, I believe, about 5 or 6 percentage points in 2016, one to keep an eye on. North Carolina, another one of these states that's, I feel like, in that true toss-up scenario, likely to have a very competitive Senate race on top of it. I'm going to leave that one for the end of the video. Now, Virginia, this is a state where Joe Biden should have quite a bit of success. It seems like establishment Democratic politicians do very well in this state, and this trend is likely to continue with Joe Biden on top of the ticket. I actually feel like if it was Bernie Sanders going against Trump, then Virginia would have become a bit more difficult of a state for the Democrats to pick up. I feel like Bernie would have been able to have more success in other areas, potentially, for instance, in the Midwest in contrast to Biden, but one area that you would definitely give a bit better of an edge to for the Democrats would be Joe Biden winning a state like Virginia. Moving up into the East, New Hampshire, very negative approval numbers right now for Donald Trump. Although Trump was very competitive with Clinton in New Hampshire in 2016, I think Joe Biden perhaps does a bit better, appeals to a bit more of a swath of voters there in New Hampshire than what Clinton was able to do. But then again, on the flip side of that, you can look back to the Democratic primary where Joe Biden finished in a rather distant 5th place. We'll see if that has some kind of an effect here in that state going towards the general election, but one where I still feel like Biden has a really good shot at going on and picking that one up. And also there's going to be a Senate race there where it looks like Shaheen has a really good shot at going on and continuing to retain that Senate seat for the Democrats. So now moving over to the state of Maine, the 1st congressional district, very safe for the Democrats. And also statewide, I'd say it's probably somewhere between either likely or a lean. I'm going to be putting it as likely for now. This is a state that tends to trend more so towards the Democrats statewide. We also saw Hillary Clinton pick up that one against Trump in 2016, whereas the 2nd congressional district, I think, is probably right in that true toss-up, just like I think the 2nd congressional district of the state of Nebraska, kind of a similar scenario. So now moving into the Midwest plus Pennsylvania, which is kind of a little bit outside of the Midwest there, but a similar type of voter demographic. I think Joe Biden is a strong contender for the Democrats in the state of Pennsylvania, given his ties to the state, Pennsylvania Joe. And I think that makes the state a bit more winnable this time around than it was for Clinton back in 2016. Now, the counter argument to this, not just in Pennsylvania, but throughout the Midwest, is the fact that Joe Biden is going to get absolutely hammered on his NAFTA vote, as well as PNTR with China, and just the free trade deals in general. That's probably going to be a lot of what this general election matchup hinges on. And if Trump is able to make a lot of inroads, hammering Biden on NAFTA and these other trade deals like he was able to effectively against Hillary Clinton, perhaps that makes the difference for Trump again this time around. Now, he wasn't able to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin by all that much. It was by less than 1 percentage point. So it's not going to take a ton for the Democrats to possibly flip these states back to their side, especially with what we saw in the 2018 midterms, where the Democrats won statewide governorships as well as Senate races in all of Wisconsin, Michigan, as well as Pennsylvania, the 3 key states that they lost presidentially in 2016. And I think that Joe Biden has a little bit more of an appeal, especially with these white working class voters across these areas, where I think it opens up the door for the Democrats to possibly flip these states back over to their side. And if I have Pennsylvania going to Joe Biden, I feel like that also would indicate that Michigan is probably going to be going for Joe Biden. Biden performed considerably better than Clinton in that head-to-head against Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary. That's probably a really good sign for Biden going towards the general election. And Michigan, typically a little bit more to the left than the state of Pennsylvania. So again, like I said, if Pennsylvania is going into the Joe Biden corner, then Michigan is probably also in that area as well. Now, Wisconsin, I feel like that's a true toss-up situation. I want to hold that one till the end. And actually kind of interesting in the Midwest right now, there's been a little bit of a shift over towards the Republicans. Now, we didn't see that as much in the 2018 midterms. We'll see if the Republicans are able to reclaim some of the gains they had made prior to that particular election cycle. But kind of in some instances, a reverse situation is happening here in the Midwest to what we're seeing out here in the Southwest, where the Democrats are gaining in a lot of these southwestern areas where the Republicans have been able to make some inroads in these Midwestern states. So going down to Ohio, a very positive result there from Trump back in 2016, defeating Clinton by a fairly considerable margin after the state had gone to Obama the 2 prior election cycles. I think this one continues to be retained by Trump and the Republicans. Joe Biden did not do very well in the Iowa caucuses. The Democratic Party spent a ton of time in the state throughout 2020. That can perhaps increase their chances at going on and winning there statewide. But if we take a look back at 2016, this is an area where Trump probably had a bit more success than maybe what many were figuring, especially after the Democrats had won it the 2 prior election cycles. I think this one is currently sitting as a lean over to Trump and the Republicans. Now, Minnesota, other than Illinois, probably the most left-leaning state in the Midwest. The Democrats absolutely cleaned up in Minnesota in the 2018 midterms. And also, this was a state that Clinton was very competitive with Trump in, but she was just able to get over the line. Biden performing a bit better in those Minnesota primaries this time around than what Clinton was able to do against Sanders back in 2016. So again, another positive sign there for Biden, where it looks like he might be a bit of a stronger contender in some of these areas where Clinton had a lot of weaknesses. So going to be giving that one as likely over to the Democrats. And that just leaves us with the areas that I think are in that true toss-up category. So I'll start out in the state of Arizona. Now, I feel like the Democrats have a really good shot at picking up this Senate seat with Mark Kelly challenging Martha Mcsalley. Of course, Mcsalley appointed to that Senate seat. She actually lost her Senate race in 2018 against Democrat Kyrsten Sinema, and I actually think that Mark Kelly will be a tougher matchup for Mcsalley in 2020 than Sinema was for her in 2018. And if Mark Kelly is potentially going to go on and win that Senate seat, I think that also is probably a positive sign for Joe Biden picking this one up. Also, Joe Biden, he should do a bit better with the older age demographic of voters in this state than, for instance, if Bernie Sanders was the nominee. Now, the contrast to that would be, well, can Joe Biden do as well with Hispanic voters as what Sanders would be able to do? And I think he does well enough with the Hispanic voters as well as picking off some of those older voters who typically are a bit more conservative to be able to put this one in the Democrats' corner. And that would be a really important one for them because it would get them over the line at 279 electoral votes at that point. But then the rest of these states, Florida in the 2018 midterms, I've talked a lot in this video about how some of these key states, or a number of them, were very strong for the Democrats in that 2018 midterm cycle. Florida was not that case, as the Republicans picked up a Senate seat as well as retaining the governorship, and I feel like Trump would just be able to narrowly eke that one out against Joe Biden. But I think it would be extremely competitive, and you could make an argument that Joe Biden might be able to have enough strength to pick that one up. We saw the Obama-Biden ticket win Florida in 2008 and 2012. Perhaps Biden would be able to pick it back up for the Democrats in 2020, but that's yet to be determined. North Carolina, I think the Democrats have a good shot at potentially picking up that Senate seat with Cunningham going against Tillis. If the Democrats are able to pick up that Senate seat, then I think that Joe Biden would probably also be in a scenario where he's potentially going on and defeating Trump. But at least at this point in time, I'm just going to be giving that one as a slight lean and tilt over to Trump. Going to need to continue to see some more polling out of the state of North Carolina and see where this state trends over the coming months. And then also Wisconsin. Out of all of these key states that Trump was able to win, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, in a Biden versus Trump matchup, I think that Trump would have his best case at picking up Wisconsin. I feel like this is a state that's a little bit more to the right at this point in time than the states of Pennsylvania and Michigan. I think it would be extremely close, but going to be giving that one as just a tilt over to Trump and the Republicans. And then also the second congressional districts of Nebraska as well as Maine, I think are just slight tilts over to Trump and the Republicans. We saw in 2018 the congressional race there was extremely close, but the Republicans were able to keep it with the incumbent that they were running against a very progressive Democrat. And then in the second congressional district of Maine, that was actually one where the Democrats were able to flip it in 2018. So two areas that are likely to be highly competitive and worth keeping an eye on. So at this point, very early on in the process, this is kind of where I'm leaning with my electoral college map, having 279 electoral votes for the former vice president and 259 for the incumbent Donald Trump. This can change, and I think you could possibly make an argument for Trump to go on and pick up the victory if the economy is able to rebound at some point over this next year and get over the crash that we've seen in the market in recent weeks. And then also if Biden has a really tough time on the debate stage and keeping things together mentally, Trump is likely to be much more active and effective on the campaign trail than what we're going to see from Biden. That can be a potential big boost, getting more enthusiasm from Trump's base than what Biden's able to get from the Democratic base. So there's a lot of avenues for Trump to possibly be able to overcome what would appear to be a disadvantage in the Electoral College at this point. But this is going to be a fluid situation, and a lot can change over the coming months. So again, guys, if you have not already done so, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel to continue to get election coverage over the course of this next year, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.